The sun gleamed over the harbor, its golden light reflecting off the luxurious yachts resting on the tranquil waters. Benjamin Carter strode toward the yacht dealership, his steps measured and confident. Dressed in a tailored beige coat and dark sunglasses, he carried himself with the quiet authority of a man accustomed to success. Yet, despite his polished appearance, his presence in this space sparked silent judgment. The world of luxury yachts belonged to a certain type of clientele, and to some, Benjamin did not fit that mold. Stepping into the showroom, he took in the lineup of vessels, each a testament to engineering and opulence. His gaze settled on a Sunseeker Predator 92, an exquisite masterpiece. He walked toward it, trailing his fingers along the sleek hull, already picturing himself at its helm. From across the showroom, Richard, a middle-aged salesman in a snug gray suit, observed Benjamin with a scrutinizing gaze. He assessed him from head to toe, his skepticism barely concealed behind a forced smile. Richard approached with the air of a man who believed he held the upper hand. "Good afternoon, sir. May I help you with anything?" he asked, his tone polite yet distant. Without turning away from the yacht, Benjamin replied evenly, "Yes, I'm interested in this model." A moment of hesitation. Richard blinked, processing the words as if he had misheard them. His lips stretched into a strained smile. "Ah, I see. This is a very exclusive yacht. Are you looking to rent it for a special occasion?" Benjamin finally turned to face him, his expression unreadable. "No," he said calmly. "I want to buy it." Richard's smile faltered, his eyes flickering with disbelief. He cast a glance around as if expecting someone else to step in, perhaps the real buyer. "Well," he said hesitantly, "perhaps you'd like to explore something more accessible. We have excellent options for those looking for a more modest experience at sea." Benjamin arched an eyebrow. "Something more accessible?" Richard nodded eagerly, gesturing toward a much smaller, far less impressive boat. "Yes, this one is economical, efficient, and easier to maintain." A knowing smile touched Benjamin's lips. He had encountered this kind of condescension before. It was always disguised beneath the veil of helpfulness, yet its message was unmistakable. From the other side of the store, Jamal, a young salesman, watched the exchange, his jaw tightening. He had seen this scenario play out before. Richard's patronizing tone, his subtle but clear dismissal, it was an old story. But Jamal knew that intervening could risk his own position, so he remained still, observing. Benjamin returned his gaze to the Sunseeker Predator 92. "I appreciate the suggestion," he said smoothly, "but I want to see this yacht, the luxury one." Richard let out a short, forced chuckle. Of course. But before we proceed, I should mention that many of our clients explore financing options." "I don't need financing," Benjamin interjected, his voice steady. Richard's throat bobbed as he swallowed. Benjamin reached into his coat, pulled out his sleek leather wallet, and placed a black card on the table. It was a silent statement, one that needed no further explanation. The moment stretched. Richard's fingers trembled slightly as he picked up the card, his mind scrambling to reconcile his assumptions with reality. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across his face. He nodded curtly and turned toward the computer system to verify the card, his usual air of control slipping away. Meanwhile, Jamal remained rooted in place, his hands clenching at his sides. Every fiber of his being urged him to step forward, to say something. But years of experience had taught him otherwise. Richard returned moments later, the card still in his hand, his forced smile back in place, but noticeably weaker. "Everything is in order," he announced, though a tremor undercut his voice. Benjamin remained unfazed. He knew what was coming next. Richard was not one to surrender easily. "Well, Mr. Carter," Richard continued, as if regaining his footing, "since you're considering this model, I think it's important that you understand the associated maintenance costs. A yacht of this caliber requires significant financial commitment, annual taxes, docking fees, engine upkeep. It can add up to hundreds of thousands per year." Benjamin's gaze remained steady. "Do you explain this to all customers?" he asked, his voice calm but pointed. "Or just some?" A pause. Richard stiffened slightly. "Oh, no. I simply want to ensure you are fully informed. Sometimes certain buyers don't take all these factors into account before making such a commitment." There it was, the unspoken implication. Benjamin allowed a slow smile to form. "I understand perfectly," he said. "Believe me, I am fully informed." He leaned forward slightly. "Or do you think I haven't managed investments far larger than this?" Richard let out an uneasy laugh, his confidence cracking. From his corner, Jamal watched, his heart pounding. Something was shifting in the room. For the first time, someone was holding Richard accountable, and for the first time, Jamal saw what it looked like when a man refused to be put in his place. Benjamin leaned back, his expression unshaken. "Actually," he said, glancing toward Jamal, "I think I'd prefer to speak with him." Richard blinked. "Jamal?" "Yes," Benjamin confirmed. "I'd like him to assist me." Jamal's breath hitched. He had been invisible for so long, and now someone was finally seeing him. Richard hesitated, clearly struggling to hide his frustration. "Well, Jamal is new to this segment. He doesn't have experience selling vessels of this level." Benjamin's expression remained unreadable. "Still, I'd like to hear from him." Jamal's heart pounded. He had spent months working in the store, absorbing knowledge about every model, every specification, but he had never been given the chance to prove himself. Now, Benjamin Carter was offering him that opportunity. Richard forced a stiff smile. "Of course, if that's what you wish." Benjamin nodded. "It is." Richard swallowed, feeling the ground shift beneath him. He had lost control of the situation, and he knew it. Jamal stepped forward, straightening his posture. "How can I assist you, sir?" he asked, his voice steady but filled with underlying emotion. Benjamin met his gaze with an encouraging smile. "I'm interested in the Sunseeker Predator 92. Tell me about its performance, engine capacity, and range." Jamal nodded, exhaling as he organized his thoughts. "This model is powered by two MTU-16 V2 1000M96L engines, capable of reaching a maximum speed of 30 knots. He began, his confidence growing with each word. He spoke fluidly, explaining every technical aspect with ease. Benjamin listened attentively, nodding occasionally. Jamal was knowledgeable, precise, and passionate. Unlike Richard, he wasn't selling with arrogance, he was selling with expertise. Richard, standing to the side, could barely contain his discomfort. He had spent years securing the most lucrative clients, always keeping Jamal in the background. Now, that very background figure was taking over the biggest sale of his career. Unable to stay silent any longer, Richard interjected with a forced chuckle. "Jamal is very diligent, but as I mentioned, he lacks experience in high-level sales. Clients of this caliber seek an advisor well-versed in the luxury lifestyle." Benjamin turned to him with a neutral expression. "And do you own a yacht, Richard?" Richard opened his mouth but faltered. "No, but so, by your logic, you also lack experience in this lifestyle?" The color drained from Richard's face. He had no response. Jamal pressed his lips together to suppress a smile. For the first time, someone had exposed Richard's hypocrisy. Benjamin exhaled slowly, his tone unwavering. "I think I've made my decision." Richard straightened, forcing another smile. "Excellent, Mr. Carter. I can process the paperwork immediately." "I want Jamal to handle my purchase," Benjamin said firmly. The room fell silent. Richard blinked, stunned. "Excuse me?" "I want Jamal to finalize the sale," Benjamin repeated, his gaze steady. "And I want the commission to go to him." Jamal felt his breath catch. He had imagined making his first big sale for months, but never like this, never this monumental. Richard, on the other hand, went pale. "Mr. Carter, "You assumed I couldn't afford this yacht," Benjamin interrupted. "You judged me before even knowing who I was, and yet you expect me to trust you with my purchase?" Richard swallowed hard, his throat dry. "It wasn't my intention to offend you." "I'm not offended," Benjamin said smoothly. "I just prefer to do business with those who see me as a client, not a mistake. Richard could only watch as the sale of his life slipped away. Jamal's hands trembled as he processed the transaction. Richard stood motionless, his face pale with realization. His prejudice had cost him everything. Benjamin signed the final document with deliberate precision and pushed the folder toward Jamal. "Congratulations, young man. You've made a great sale today." Jamal nodded, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Thank you, Mr. Carter. It's an honor to serve you." Richard clenched his fists, his mind reeling. He had spent years assuming his dominance in the store was unshakable. Today, he had been proven wrong in front of everyone. As Benjamin turned to leave, Richard made one last attempt. "Mr. Carter, I think you're making a mistake. Mr. Carter, I think you're making a mistake." "A mistake?" Richard exhaled sharply. "A yacht like this isn't just about the money. You need to understand how to manage it, where to dock it. Jamal," he glanced at his colleague, "has never handled a sale of this level." Benjamin smiled, but it wasn't a smile of amusement. It was a smile of victory. "Tell me, Richard," he said, crossing his arms, "how would you feel if a client walked in and assumed you were incompetent, without knowing anything about you?" Richard had no answer. Benjamin shook his head. "That's exactly what you did to me." The room was silent. Employees, customers, everyone had been listening, and everyone now knew the truth. Benjamin adjusted his coat, giving Richard one final look. "If you didn't learn the lesson today, life will teach it to you later." With that, he walked out, leaving behind an unshakable silence. Richard stood frozen, the weight of humiliation settling over him. He had lost more than a commission. He had lost his reputation. Meanwhile, Jamal's world had changed. Clients who had once overlooked him now sought his guidance. Colleagues who had dismissed him now showed respect. A day later, he made a life-altering decision. With the commission from the sale, Jamal quit his job and launched his own business, a nautical consultancy firm catering to clients who, like him, had been made to feel they didn't belong in this world. Now, with an office near the harbor, he was doing what he loved on his own terms, helping people buy their dream boats, not based on perception, but on their passion. And Richard? Richard was left to live with the consequences of his actions, knowing that his arrogance had cost him everything.